Welcome. My name is Mark Baer. I'm the Executive Director of the Museum of Monterey. The show is Muse. We are shooting live in the museum. My guest, Janet Martinez, and Janet is here because we are opening the new show called Boat Builders as part of our year-long History of Fishing exhibition that's taking place upstairs at the museum, curated for the year by Dr. Jennifer Colby. And the big party is on Saturday, for which I will be pouring the wine personally. And welcome, Janet.
Thank you.
So, why is the story of the boat builders important here?
Well, I've always been interested in the boat building and the creativity of craftsmanship of building boats. And my grandfather was the main person at the Monterey Boat Works. And all this time I remember visiting in Monterey, and I would go with my grandfather, Nonno in Italian, and he would take me in his truck, and we would drive over to the Monterey Boat Works, and he would rush over the railroad tracks just to see me bounce, and I would just start giggling, and I knew it was because he wanted to hear me, and it brought us fond memories. I would always remember the smell of leather and his cigar smoke, because he always had a cigar, and that just keeps bringing back the memories of the boat builders. And it was something that I thought, in the Monterey, we hear so much about the fishing and the sardines and golf, but the one thing I felt was lacking was the story of the men who built the fishing boats. And that's what I was wanting to bring out. And it's been I guess a passion for me for many years.
Well, just to put this in some kind of perspective for our audience, part of this show comes out of a book that is a work in progress that you are working on now.
Right.
So I've seen the collages that you've made. I've seen how you've put this together. So this is more than you just archiving the personal history. You're archiving the stories, plus you're telling them in a visual way. So this is a big undertaking for you.
It is. It's a photo journey. It's a photo journey through the history of my family, which was the Sino family, and all of them as boat builders from way back, from like 3 or 4 generations. And they all came from Isla de Femini, little province of Palermo. And it was very common here in Monterey to have a lot of Sicilians.
Let's give me a good historic timeline. Where are we? What year are we in here?
Well, my grandfather's father came over from Isla de Femini about 1901 with one of his brothers. And then in 1903, my grandfather came over, and he was 14. I found this was interesting when I had found that information on the immigration logs. He was 14. They all arrived in Pittsburgh, which at that time was known as Black Diamond. And then around 1916, my grandfather, well, actually he met my grandmother in San Francisco, and in 1915 they got married, and then they decided he wanted to move to Monterey. So he moved over here in 1916.
Now, were they coming to fish? Was this part of the fishing exile?
No. They were building boats. We
just had Peter Caniglio here talking about Pietro Ferrante. Ah. And again, they came, and they came as fishermen. And so was this a skill that came from Italy as well? And because this is a different part of the story that I've ever heard.
That's true.
What's the history of the boat builder that's different than the fisherman?
Over in Isla de Femini, my great-grandfather, he was a boat builder, a carpenter, he was a mason. He had all the contractual skills. And then his sons learned it. So when they came over, they were not really fishermen. They would probably go fishing once in a while, but that was not their skills. Their skills were building boats. And usually at that time, it was the Lampara style boats, fishing boats.
Mm-hmm. So what was the impetus to leave Italy? Or do you know back that far?
Well, what I understood was that there really wasn't much work over there, and it was the American dream, I believe, is coming over here and coming over to this part of the United States. They started off ended in New York, but they knew they were coming down to the Pittsburgh area.
So we're not in Pennsylvania. Where is Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Pittsburgh, California, East Bay.
Okay.
So East Bay, it's near Antioch and that area.
Okay, and then so they came with the intention of working on boats, building boats, and then how did they go from that to starting Monterey Boat Works?
Well, actually, my grandfather, when he came over, he was still working for other people. So he got a job with Cochrane Pearson, who at that time owned the Monterey Boat Works. Then after a few years, he had this entrepreneur spirit, which I think all of the Italians did, and decided that he was going to make his own boatworks, the Sino Boatworks. At that time, there was only some room that he was able to, was like I think it was like a garage type thing that was inland on Wave Street. And that's where it started. Then he was there for a few years, and he decided, I'm going to build another building. And he did. He built actually right next to the Monterey Boat Works. And the Sino Boat Works was there for, it was about 1925, 27. And then when the Cochrane Pearson group sold to Gus Smith then passed away about 1937, and my grandfather says, I don't want any competition over here. And so he bought then from the estate the Monterey Boat Works and kept the Sino Boat Works next to it, but used that more for storage of extra boats and equipment.
So what's the relationship between the boatworks community, the boat builders, and the fishermen?
It's very close, because my grandfather would also have fishermen. They would come up and bring their own boats. He would help them bring their boats up, and they could work on their own boats in the yard. So there was a very close relationship all the time. And I remember, for many, many years, a lot of his payments were fish. So we would go to my grandmother's house, and you'd find squid, you'd find all kinds of things that was in payment for helping them build, repair their own boats.
So as the fishing industry develops here, what's the percentage of the boats that were coming out of from your family boat yard as to the overall situation? Because where were the other boats coming from? And were they, again, we have the Japanese fishermen, we have the Portuguese, we have these other groups. Was Monterey Boat Works involved with all these entities, or was it sticking within the Sicilian world?
No, my grandfather was very good at least pre-World War II. He also built the Japanese boats for the divers, for the abalone divers. And that was an interesting process. We have a beautiful photo of him launching one that was called the Baer for Andy Scov, who was a local diver here in Monterey. And one of the things that I guess their biggest business was repairing boats. Where the Monterey Boat Works is located, you cannot bring in like the purse seiners, and those were the ones, of course, that became really big for the sardine times. So he was able to repair the smaller boats, the Lampara styles, the Monterey Clipper that were no more than 50 feet. So the other boats were built in San Francisco usually.
A Sino family built boat, what's the trademark of that? What's the specialness about that?
The specialty was the craftsmanship, first of all. They never ever had a boat that sunk. And secondly,
well, that's a big deal.
It is a very big deal, yes. And the second thing was that nothing that went through my grandfather was drawn. It was all in his head. And he would have to teach his apprentices, which were my uncles, Ray and Frank, and they had to learn by doing and doing and doing. And so there were no plans. There were no architectural plans for them to follow it.
So he has a boat in his head. Mm-hmm. How does that work? What's that process?
Then what he does is through that process, he built wood templates.
Okay.
And then his workers, or my uncles, and also whoever he had working at the boatworks, would follow if he had them where it was going to bend, he would use the right wood for bending, and but it was all through templates.
He designed through his hands, mm-hmm. and he designed in miniature, like a sculpture.
Well, actually, no. The templates were full size.
Oh my God!
Yeah. He didn't do little models. They were actually full size. Yeah.
How do you keep that in your head?
I don't know.
Wow.
But it was absolutely incredible.
And what kind of boats did they build?
Well, the Monterey Clipper, which was usually a two-sided boat, bow that would be kind of bent. The Lampara was also, that was one that they brought over actually from Italy. But these were larger ones, larger Lamparas. In 1930, he built what's called the General Pershing, which we could discuss later, but that's an incredible boat that was the biggest boat he ever built, and that was like almost 60 feet. The rest of the boats have been very small. So they were boats that were used for local fishing, for party boats, which would have like groups of people going out fishing. He also during the sardine times was one of the he was the only builder that I know of for the sardine hoppers, which were they were large boxes basically that would be connected to the purse seiners that would be pulling in all the sardines, and then they had this pipe that would go right to the cannery. And I believe it was Hovden Cannery who actually came up with the design, but then my grandfather started improving on it, and so he became the only one building them for them.
And let's talk about the Anthony Boy.
The Anthony Boy was the last commercial building, actually, boat to be built in 1965, and it was a clipper, and it was the only boat that Frank and Ray ever built that actually had plans. This was their first, this was a challenge. It was the only boat they ever built by themselves without their father actually kind of giving them advice too. So it became very exciting. It was an exciting time for the Boatworks. It was really the last boat that came out of the Monterey Boat Works.
And again, that's up, they can see the model upstairs here at the museum. So let's talk about this show. This is kind of exciting.
This is a photo journal that I was doing of the whole story, the family, the boat builders and the Sino family, which is my family. And I wanted to share that. And that was something that came from, and I have a mini family that's been coming together, giving me pictures, telling me little tidbits of stories. And the exhibit then shows, these incredible boats. We found just snapshots of the Roz, the Holiday, so these wonderful fishing boats that were built in the 40s and 50s. And we have film that my father actually took back in the early 1950s, 8mm film that we converted to digital. And that now is going to be upstairs too, so people see launching of some of these actual boats.
So don't miss this show, Monterey Boat Works, part of the Year of Fishing, curated by Jennifer Colby. I think we've got that. And my guest, Janet Martinez.
Granddaughter of Angelo Zeno.
And a book to come.
And a book to come.
Before we say goodbye here, the new Monterey Boat Works, Mike Marana, our sponsor for this show. Is this correct?
Yes, the Monterey Bay Boat Works. Mike he said he would not start his boat works unless he had Frank Sino actually be his manager for him. And so back in 1985, when he was trying to work with the city of Monterey to get permission for this, he went to Frank, who at that time was already retired from the Monterey Boat Works, and he was working at Tynan Lumber. And he asked Frank, says, if I can get this to go, will you come and work with me? And he said, it was so cute because I just talked to him a little while ago, and he said, Frank just threw his pen down and he said, absolutely, you tell me when and I'll be ready.
Thank you so much for sponsoring this show, New Monterey Boat Works.
Absolutely.
And you, the public, you better come see this. Anyway, I'm Mark Baer. We'll see you next time on Muse. Thank you.